On Tuesday, 12 September 2023, Unity announced its new pricing structure. Developers didn't take long to react. Slay the Spire developer MegaCrit announced that it would be switching engines for its next game. Rust developer Gary Newman revealed that Rust 2 will definitely not be a Unity game. And Cult of the Lamb developer Massive Monster tweeted, albeit jokingly, that it would be removing its game from storefronts altogether. In this video, you'll discover why Unity's new pricing policy has caused such outrage, why the engine is so important to the indie scene, and how this change will affect upcoming Unity games such as Hollow Knight Silksong. If you look at Unity's evolution as a company, you'll see that this latest controversy is just a symptom of a bigger disease. Its story is the classic tale of a small company with good intentions becoming a large corporation interested only in increasing its share price. Unity was originally founded in a Copenhagen apartment by 3 developers who wanted to democratize video game development by making it more accessible. The engine was launched in 2005 for Mac OS and quickly became the default option for people wanting to make games for the iPhone. The company gradually expanded to other platforms, making Unity the best engine for cross-platform development. Unity became the most popular game engine on the planet, used by more than half of all video games in 2018. The engine grew thanks to its ease of use, community support, and low system requirements. Unlike other engines, Unity did not charge royalties, only a flat fee and later a subscription. Without Unity, the indie game scene would not be where it is today. It lowered the barrier to entry for game development so much that people with no experience could get in. BattleBit Remastered is one of the best examples of how Unity has revolutionized the gaming industry. A passion project for 2 people, BattleBit became one of the biggest indie hits of 2023, selling over 2 million copies since its release. Without Unity, this game would never have seen the light of day, but the goodwill generated by success stories like BattleBit has begun to erode. The company went public in 2020 and began spending billions of dollars acquiring companies that had nothing to do with video games. The backlash reached a fever pitch in 2022 when it announced its $4.4 billion merger with ironSource, a company specializing in monetizing mobile apps. Unity users accused the company, led by CEO John Riccitiello, of only caring about short-term profits and infinite growth. He is seen as the mastermind behind Unity's demise. For context, Riccitiello was CEO of Electronic Arts between 2007 and 2013. Under his leadership, EA developed high-profile failures, such as the $200 million Star Wars The Old Republic, the Medal of Honor reboot, and SimCity 2013. It also released controversial sequels to fan-favorite franchises, such as Dead Space and Mass Effect, which introduced microtransactions and paid passes to play online. Riccitiello's vision for gaming can be summed up by a quote from a shareholder meeting, in which he suggests charging players $1 every time they reload in a Battlefield game. As a result, the company's reputation plummeted. EA was even voted the worst company in America in 2012. Riccitiello left the company a year later, with its share price 67% lower than when he started as CEO. After the ironSource backlash began, Riccitiello added fuel to the fire in an interview with Pocket Gamer. He compared indie developers who refuse to implement microtransactions to Ferrari designers who make cars with clay and carving knives, branding them as some of the biggest fucking idiots. Riccitiello's comments show that he represents a company that has lost its way, that's forgotten the millions of indie developers who have made the engine what it is today, and their reasons for getting into game development in the first place. Not for the money, but for their love and passion for games. This change in mentality becomes even more apparent when you look at the license fees that Unity has now announced. On the 1st of January 2024, it will charge game developers a runtime fee, 20 cents for each installation of a game made in Unity. It doesn't matter when the game was released, how much it costs, or how it was purchased. Once you reach Unity's threshold of $200,000 in revenue and 200,000 installs, you're on the hook. This, along with the many other problems that Unity's licensing change has created, has put its future as a game development tool into question. Now you might be thinking, 20 cents isn't that much. It would just be 1% per installation of a successful $20 game, far less than the 5% royalty Epic Games charges for licensing licensing its Unreal Engine, but that changes to almost 10% per install for a game like Vampire Survivors, which owes much of its success to its low launch price of $2.99. And what about free-to-play games with monetization? With the new pricing system, some developers could end up owing Unity more in royalties than they're making in profits. This could force them to remove their game from storefronts, making Massive Monster's tweet about Cult of the Lamb a reality. Announcing these changes less than 4 months before implementation shows no respect for game developers who have to plan their projects several years in advance. These developers now have the choice of continuing to work with tools from a company that is essentially holding them hostage, or switching to another engine, which could result in years of delays. While this may be manageable for large game companies with sufficient resources, the new fees could be disastrous for the small budget indie teams that make up the majority of Unity users. Then there are the technical issues. At the time of making this video, Unity has not explained how it will handle the technical aspects of this pay-per-install system. How will it track installs? How will it separate legitimate buyers from pirated copies? What about DRM-free copies? Unity said that the cost of subscription services such as Game Pass and PS Plus will be passed on to distributors. Will Microsoft and Sony be happy about having to pay millions to Unity? Have they been informed of this change? And will they accept the charges at all? Unity is also inconsistent in its wording. In the initial announcement, their FAQ said that developers would be charged per install. They've since backtracked, clarifying that reinstalls don't count, but installs on different devices do. And the concept of streaming, which is becoming more and more popular, isn't addressed at all. The confusion and vagueness of Unity's communication shows that these decisions were pushed through without the technical side being worked out first. According to a former employee, a significant number of Unity staff protested the changes and resigned in response to the announcement. The biggest problem is that this change also applies to games that have already been released. Developers of older Unity games will be forced to pay these royalties, even though Unity's terms of service, which they agreed to at the time, stated that if you get a version of Unity and don't update your project, we think you should be able to stick to that version of the TOS. Developers also have to blindly trust how Unity counts these installs. There are no checks and balances, and there is no transparency. Unity has all the power, and customers have no way of checking the numbers themselves. So, what does this mean for your favorite indie games and developers? Unfortunately, there isn't much good news to share. If Unity stays on course, every developer will be worse off financially due to these unexpected costs. In the worst case scenario, these runtime fees could lead to game delays, layoffs, and even bankruptcy. And even if Unity reverses these changes, the damage it has done is irreversible. The company has shown that it cannot be trusted and will renege on its promises in the name of short-term profits. The runtime fee also isn't guaranteed to stay at 20 cents forever. At any point in time, Unity could decide to unilaterally raise fees, putting development teams in further financial difficulty. This will cause many to choose other engines such as Unreal or Godot over Unity for their future projects. Let's take Team Cherry as an example. The 3-person team from Australia used to pay a flat subscription fee for Unity every year, and they have to pay an additional 20 cents per installation of Hollow Knight, per player and per device they install it on. If they continue to develop the upcoming Hollow Knight Silksong in Unity, the runtime fees will cut into their profits even more. And Team Cherry will have to hope that Unity does not decide to increase these fees in the future. They could also decide to rush the game and release it in 2023 to avoid paying for the massive amount of installs on launch day. However, this would severely compromise the quality of the game and damage Team Cherry's reputation. Or they could decide to continue developing the game in a different engine. But to do that, the team would have to rebuild their entire project in that engine from scratch. A painful prospect for a game that has been in development for over 4 years. As you can see, there are no good options here, and Team Cherry is just one of millions of indie developers that rely on Unity for their income. The sad conclusion is that Unity has caused an irreparable breach of trust with indie developers. No matter what the company decides to do from now on, the damage it has done is too great to heal. The era of Unity enabling passion projects like BattleBit Remastered to come to life is over, and with no clear alternative for the easy-to-use engine, the company has severely damaged the indie gaming industry as a whole. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this video informative, and check out this video if you want to learn how the Unity-powered BattleBit Remastered became one of the biggest indie hits of 2023. Thanks for watching and see you next time.